We're so happy to have you joining us for Briny, Boozy, Bubbly Fun with Fermenting, German Sauerkraut, and today, Wavy Colada. And it is our online workshop series that we'll be taking through the summer. If you're willing to try some new tips and tricks for crafted cocktails at home, this is the guy that can take you on that journey. Dänny has been doing food, wine, and spirit education for 27 years. He is the founder at DC Spirits and partner at Shaker and Spoon, the award-winning national cocktail subscription service. Welcome, Dänny.
Howdy, how's it going?
Great. Good to have you. Yes, you have the floor.
Look at all these fun people in here. A lot of people, it looks like a lot of people made some sauerkraut, which is great. And now Shawn, looks like you have some huge fans from last week, so that's kind of great. What I'd love to do is to get right into it so we have more time, how do I say this, to imbibe? Can we say that? More time we have to dive into this, the more time we'll have to sip and to talk and to figure out. At the end of the day, taste is subjective. You can't be wrong about what you like, right? So, you might be trying to make a drink for a friend that's something that you love and they despise, and you're both right? So I think one of the really important things as we go through all three of these sessions, really 6 sessions, because it's 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, et cetera. One of the important things is also figuring out what you like, right? Because that will really help you for future, whether you are cooking with friends or family, whether you are at a bar requesting a cocktail or looking at a menu, or depending on where we're talking about, sometimes deciphering the hieroglyphics that are cocktail menus, right? So there may be ingredients and things that you don't know or aren't familiar with. And I think it's really important that you feel familiar and comfortable with them, because if you do, then you're going to have a better time. And quite honestly, especially with when a bartender is involved, they will be very happy to steer you in the direction that they think that you're going to enjoy the most. So I'd love to start off with Shawn introducing himself and reviewing a little bit of last week. Shawn, take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Dänny. Thanks for welcoming us, and Courtney and everybody who's here. It's great to be back with the U.S. Botanic Gardens and all of our friends who are joining in online after the fact. I'm Shawn. I'm an artist and an educator. I've been fermenting since about 2010. And some folks I know last week asked to see it again, so I'll show. This is the book that I learned a lot of my stuff from by Sander Katz, Wild Fermentation. He has a fantastic follow-up that I'll also just show again called The Art of Fermentation. It is everything you want to know about fermentation and a lot of things that you didn't even know there was to know. So it's really a pleasure to be back and to hear a little bit about how things went. Let's see, Dänny, is there anything else you want to say about yourself?
Yeah, that's my real beard. I just wanted people to know that.
There you go. Don't ask him to take his hat off. He's got another beard on top.
Yeah, tons of beards. Thank you.
So while we're getting started, go ahead and please, and this will be good info for Dänny, but go ahead and share your favorite cocktail and any goals that you have for this class, including any questions that have already come up about your sauerkrauts. We're going to address hopefully some questions that might have come up for folks that I've already got planned, but this is a good time to get those in the chat so we know like what kind of a mixer, mover, and shaker are you already? What do you like to drink? And what do you really want to leave knowing from our time today? And during the day, we're going to check in about our sauerkrauts that you made. We're going to do a little tasting. Then Dänny is going to take us through the ingredients for our Wavy Colada, at which point we will make waves, right? We're going to make a drink. I saw that language in your intro, Courtney. We got this. Then we're going to sip and sense, right? So we get to try it out and also use all of our 5 senses, maybe more, to understand in a really embodied way what it is that we've got, and including with our pairing of the sauerkraut. So really understanding how these flavors play off of each other. And then hopefully we'll still have some time left for questions, reflection, and closing. So here's what I want to know. How did your kraut come out? So maybe, we'll do as many word storms as we can. But just to start, what's a word that expressed the process for you? That could be like, it was difficult, or I messed up, or it's been awesome. Any words that are coming out. And if you don't already, go ahead and get your kraut from wherever you've got it. Now, I've got this one that's a little bit older than yours by maybe a half a week. And just while we're at it, I wanted to show you, maybe you're off getting yours. This is a kitchen sink kraut that I made with the leftovers. So, I chopped up some cabbage to use last week. And then I was like, oh, we didn't actually get to the point of making. I already have a giant jar. What should I do with it? And so I just put in basically everything I had in my fridge, like a little bit of it. And part of why I did that, we talk about how healthy sauerkraut and other probiotic foods are for our guts. But there's great research that's out there that shows that you can have a more robust microbial colony in your gut by eating around 30 foods a week, 30 different plant-based foods. So that seems like a lot, but it includes vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, even your herbs can count in there. So part of what I did in here is I tried to put as many things as I had, even just a little bit. So that way I know if I put this on the side of something else that I'm having, I've got like 10 probiotic, powerful vegetables that are already coming with me. But I also want to put that out first thing just to make sure that it's clear, like the technique that we're learning, this sauerkraut, or what Sanderkart calls kraut-chi, because it's like the same process for sauerkraut or for kimchi. A kraut-chi is just taking our vegetables, or sometimes our fruits and nuts, whatever else we have in there, salting it, pounding it to get that brine to come up. And you can do that with anything. You could do it with just garlic, or just onions, or just green tomatoes. And you could also do it with basically everything you have, as I've done here. All right, Courtney, because it's hard for me to see the chat, can you tell me what are some of the words that have come up so far about our krauts?
So we have some, we had a little mixture of drinks and kraut. I think we're excited about both. But we have been sharing some of the outcomes of the kraut. So we have one who needed a little more water. They had to transfer it to a smaller jar, and now it's in the fridge. We have another where their kraut is taking a while because they fermented it in a cold garage. So I guess they didn't get that heat, but they're waiting, and I'm sure they're excited. I'm excited too. If we have, we did have someone who wanted to know about how to keep it from getting soggy. How to keep that sauerkraut from getting soggy.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
Let's
come. Looks like some of the more prominent outcomes. I'll let you know if we got some more come up.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So great. Let's go ahead. If you haven't yet, open your jar and give it a smell. I'm feeling like mine is, definitely has like a little bit of an oniony flavor to it. Thank you, Dänny. Yes. Get my nose in there. Now, I think if you're brave enough, I would just go ahead. I'm going to do now and take a sip of the brine to get a sense of what it's like.
That's how it's done.
Of course, I could use a spoon if this wasn't my house and I was sharing with other people. And it is like definitely sour. It's been going for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just take the weight off of this. Let me hold this up so we can really get it. Yeah, so I've got that glass weight that I used in there. And for those of us who said that our liquid dried off, we want to be checking on our brine because it can evaporate, especially if you're not using one of these lids. And I will say, I put the link in with some resources to get these anaerobic lids earlier. They're a really accessible purchase. I would say if you decide that you enjoy fermenting, they make your life a lot easier. They make for a crisper kraut because it's anaerobic. They make the comm yeast a lot less likely, and there's a lot less room for evaporation. So your kraut drying out is a little bit less likely to happen. It's not to say it doesn't. You should still check your kraut every 3 to 4 days at most.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, I like to keep mine on the counter. To me, it's like having a little child there, and I like to check in with them every day, just to look at them. So I took off the other weight that's on there, and these were the leaves, the outer leaves that I'm probably not gonna eat, though they are edible, and I could. And there's a little bit of like a goopiness to the brine, which is totally normal. Sometimes the bacteria in there can create a little bit of slime. And because this is a larger jar, it's going to take longer overall for things to ferment, and the slime tends to go down near the end. So if you haven't yet, go ahead. Let's just take the texture. What are you noticing about the texture? Anything you notice that you want to put into the the chat. I'm happy to entertain and to hear. Okay. And then otherwise, I'd say like get your fingers, get a fork in there, and let's get a little taste.
Yeah, we got some crunchy going on. We got some salty going on.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a question about benefits for using a starter culture for fermenting vegetables. Are there benefits to that?
I think if you discover that you like love the flavor of whatever you've made and you really want that flavor again, there's no harm in starting it. What you can, part of what happens when we put in a starter culture is we're saying this is the strain that we want in there, right? So like I could take a jug of apple juice and put it with a cheesecloth over it and just wait for whatever yeast is in the air to come and change that into alcohol. And in a beer term, we'd call that a saison. It's like whatever is the kind of random yeast that went in there. But if I know I want a particular flavor, you know, there's a reason people pass their sourdough on. There's a reason that now you can go online and buy a particular yeast that's good for Chenin Blanc or for Sauvignon Blanc or for something else. It's because people have distilled these things into something that is packageable and therefore replicable easily. But if you're kind of open, you know, it also means that part of the challenge can be there are multiple things that can get in and start fermenting. And so using a starter culture is one way to just make sure that you have good bacteria that you're starting out with, you know. Something we didn't talk about a lot last time is like cleaning your jars before you get started so that you make sure there isn't a lot of bacteria that's hanging out in there that could do you dirty. So I agree, just to say was very crunchy. It had a great snap for me. Mine, a little bit of that those caraway seed flavor, not too strong. I'm gonna take just another little bite because now I'm kind of hungry.
What's contributing to the onion taste? Well, the onion smell. You had an onion smell, but do you also have an onion taste?
I don't taste it as much. I'm getting a lot of that more like sour cabbage flavor.
Okay.
But I do really smell it. And
I
remember when I first started fermenting, sometimes I would find that onion smell off-putting and I would think that my batch was bad when it just was like overly onionish. It's a kind of
okay.
Wish I could describe it exactly because it's almost a little cross between like an egg and an onion. I don't know if others are smelling that too, but it has a flavor that's just slightly like it's a little nasty, but but it still tastes good.
Going through their breakdown process. You said something really critical last week. You said there's a space in between fresh and not fresh, like fresh and rotten almost, right? It's like a lot of playground in between there. So for those of us who are new to fermenting, getting used to these different textures and smells that are normally associated with throw it away. Here we are getting into a space where we can use these vegetables, know how to package them so that we're not wasting food. We're creating a whole nother delicious side dish almost. Is this a side dish? Or does it depend on where you're from?
I would call it mostly a side dish, partly because of the salt content, that it's a good side dish. But, you know, kimchi fried rice, like sausage and sauerkraut, that is a meal. Yeah. You know, if you have it as like a full thing once in a while. Again, the pirates having it for scurvy, I'm sure they weren't just doing it as a side dish.
Got it.
But I think to your point, Courtney, it goes to say that ultimately, like the point is to really empower you and your taste buds. I think Donnie's going to say this too. Like, do you like it sweet? Do you like it salty? And that I think in fermentation, sometimes we do want to use our brain a little bit of like, it smells a little off, but did it stay under the liquid? Has it been closed off from vermin? Then like, it's probably okay. And if you take a little taste of it, you're going to know a lot more. You'll know instantly like, oh, that's not good. That's not good. And you'll spit it out, or you'll be like, oh, that's funky in exactly the right way.
Yeah. So some of the kraut flavors, before we get to jump in with Donnie, some of them are crispy. This is the most crispy, salty but not sour. And then their onions are mildly sweet and they're really enjoying it. They're saying it's actually really good.
That makes me so happy. And if it's not sour enough, leave it. I promise there's probably more fermentation. Just to say a few quick tips on this before we go on. One of the people who I think is with us back tonight had emailed me about her kraut and she wasn't sure. I thought this was a good example to show. So you can see on the far left, her vegetables are all in the jar, but they're not packed down very tightly at all. There's lots of space in between them. In the second image in the middle, they're much more packed down. And this is a combination. You now can really see the liquid rising up. I think she also added some brine. And then one thing is that I believe in our conversations, this kraut did wind up getting a little bit moldy. And it sounds like that was because the water level dropped and we didn't notice it, which totally happens. No stress, no shame. One thing that can also contribute is having a lot of air. It's ideal. It's not always possible, but it's ideal to have your kraut or your kraut chi, whatever you're fermenting, to fill nearly to the top of your jar. You know, maybe like up to here, and then the rest is room for weights and for air. A little bit lower is okay, but it's kind of like that bacteria. The more open air is just available, particularly like when it's really bubbling, there's lots of CO2 that's leaving. And so there's not a ton of room for something to come in. But once the bubbling slows down, having all that airspace creates a lot more room where a nefarious bacteria that you don't want could get inside. And, you know, and to being bubbly, they are super bubbly. So I came back to my kitchen salad kraut and the airlock was completely full. And in a way, that's okay, right? Like if the liquid is to here, that's telling me then the liquid is definitely covering everything in here. But it can easily overflow into the rest. As you can see, it already has. There's some pink that's gone into the water chamber that's supposed to keep it oxygen free. So I watched to see how regularly the bubbles were coming up. And that was my stopwatch, is in 37 seconds, 7 different times a bubble came out. So it was very gassy, right? And that gas means that the juice is bubbling up. So if you didn't already, and I apologize if I didn't forewarn you, but you might want to put something underneath your kraut so that you don't wake up in the morning to a soggy counter or a soggy, garage, if that's where you put your stuff. And there are lots of ways to deal with those bubbles as they come. You can burp them. If you have one of these jars, then just pressing on the top of them will encourage some bubbles to come up. I often take them and turn them around and you can see the bubbles floating to the top, which I also just really enjoy. It's a great way to procrastinate on other tasks that I need to get done.
and you know what? And speaking of like what we get to enjoy and procrastinate for later, when we have our pairing, we can come back to these ideas because I have questions about like anaerobic covers. We have some questions about how much of the liquid. So this feels like when we come back to the pairing, we can address those. How's that feel?
Yeah, happy to do that. I'd rather we have more time at the end for questions. That's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. You have one really important question, Shawn, probably the most important you'll get asked. So you were talking about like maybe put something underneath the jar. Should I not be, like when I go to sleep at night, should I not be sleeping with my ferment? Is that bad? You
can be the thing that goes under your jar. Yeah, if you really want that.
Great.
You just sleep with it right under your mouth.
Absorbent pajamas.
Yeah. Right. I've never seen anyone put a diaper under their ferment, but if we have young parents in the audience, there's no reason. They make them extra absorbent for a cause.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, friends. Take it away, Dänny.
Thanks so much, Shawn.
So we're gonna dive into the Wavy Colada. One of the things that's really interesting about this, I mean, we're here with every time I say USBG, just so that the audience knows, I think the United States Bartenders Guild. So every time there's an email back and forth or somebody texts something about USBG, I go on high alert. But we're talking about the Botanic Garden, of course, and what better spirit to start off the series with than gin, right? Because gin is for the most part, a neutral spirit that then has botanicals added to it. And in order to be gin, it does have to be predominantly juniper berry, right? So there are all kinds of modern gins, but they're not missing juniper, right? Otherwise, it really just wouldn't be a gin. So the first thing I want to do is just do a quick overlay of what we're going to be doing here. So normally this cocktail, I put it over here in this guy. This is the little recipe card that if you picked up the kit beforehand for the Wavy Colada, sort of everything's in here that allows you to make the cocktail. Now, this cocktail was originally made with cachaça, which is a spirit from Brazil. It is essentially a sugar cane juice distillate. So if you're familiar with rum, a lot of times people say, oh, it's Brazilian rum. But rum, as you know it, is predominantly, especially if it's spelled R-U-M or R-O-N in Espanol, you're talking about something that is a distillation of molasses. So that is sugarcane that is cooked. That result is then fermented and distilled, and that is most rums that you try. If it's agricole rum, right? So usually from a French country or from the Caribbean where it's spelled R-H-U-M, that's going to be sugar cane, where they just take the sugarcane juice, ferment and distill. There's no cooking or molasses involved. So the Brazilian product, which is called cachaça in Portuguese, this one listed right here with the little cedilla over the C, that actually is a sugar cane juice distillate. And as of 2008, it is officially cachaça. So there's a little link that Courtney put into the chat. Thanks, Courtney. So, and then this is just shows you what the drink might look like at the end. Fantastic, great. Move back over here. So what we're doing for this particular cocktail is we are showing you the versatility of not only gin, but something that we're going to talk about often, both in Shawn's sessions, the A sessions, and the cocktail sessions, the B sessions, is personal preference, right? So this is a cocktail that was meant for not only a sugarcane distillate, but specifically cachaça, which is a little more like funky, and depending on which one you get, you can potentially fuel your car with it. It's pretty petrol-y, right? So I think it's really important when you're opening up a magazine, you're opening up a book, somebody sends you a link online that has a recipe in it. If there's something in there that says tequila and you're like, not a tequila fan, first of all, I would encourage you to try different tequilas, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's not great. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's amazing, right? So, but if it's tried and true and you're like, I'm tequila days are behind me and you want to try something different, don't throw that whole recipe out. Try, if it's something with Blanco tequila or unaged tequila for the most part, try to find something like a gin, a white rum, a vodka, something that can replace that, but also goes with the other flavors. If the other flavors are very strong in the drink, then maybe you want to stick with the gin, because the vodka may pop those things out, like something like cardamom or turmeric or cilantro, something like that. Maybe you want to try that with a different spirit that has its own body, like a white rum. For this particular cocktail, I chose gin not only because it's for the Botanic Gardens, but also because gin happens to go very well in this drink with all the other flavors. And it allows us to talk about how important botanicals are. So gin in general, I put this little thing here. Can you all see my cursor when I do that? Okay. So at the top, I put a little song so that it would stick in your head for the rest of the time. Can't hear you. You're muted.
We were hoping you were going to sing the song.
I normally would, but because of the fact this is going to be recorded, there is zero chance that I'm going to do that. Zero chance. If you want to meet me for karaoke after this, no problem. But yeah, now you can hear this in your head, and it'll be going for the rest of the time. So gin essentially is a distilled spirit with botanicals added and a predominant characteristic coming from juniper berries. And there are many, many different types of gin. I have a bevy of them here, no pun intended. The one that I'm going to be using for the cocktail today is number 3. This is a London dry gin that I happen to really enjoy. And I think I think London dry works the best for this particular cocktail, because for the most part, London dry gins, one of the requirements is you can't add any sugar to it, where even with dry gin, you can add a modicum of sugar to it. and they usually have fewer botanicals. And I kind of want, so like, Tanqueray has 4, right? So juniper, angelica root, coriander, and licorice, right? So it's just 4, and they're really distinct. And I think it's when you have something that is not overloaded with botanicals, it allows the other aspects of the cocktail to shine. And there are some where you'll try it with a different gin and it just will not work. And that's why, having multiple gins on hand is a really great thing for your toolkit. I just came back from Chile and I brought this one gin that's called Bubbly, right? And this is a gin that has botanicals specifically from the Chilean side of Patagonia, right? Super interesting. A lot of the things in there look like things that would be familiar to you, but they really just exist there. So there were a couple of leaves that we would snap in half and smell. And even as we made our way through, it was like a 6-day hike. As we made our way through, we would find that same tree with the same leaves and snap them, and it would be a different element of that flavor profile. So super interesting. So under the other categories here, I have dry gin, London dry, Plymouth gin, Old Tom, aged or reserve gin, Navy strength, Japanese gin, New World gin. There's going to be a lot of et ceteras in this presentation because every day there's something new, and we also can't fit all of them into these slides. Otherwise, there would be 100 pages. This is a really cool one. It's called Bar Hill Gin. It's from Vermont. It would be classified as a modern gin. And one of the things that's really cool about this is they actually add honey back into it. So they have a vodka that's 100% distilled from honey. That's kind of their thing. Here's like the wax seal on the top. And they actually support apiaries all over the country. It's really amazing. Little distillery in Vermont. And there's a little bee on the top too. You can see that. It smells like gin, but there's something there. What is that? And it's honey. And so I wouldn't classify it as something sweet, but if you're making a cocktail like a bee's knees, for example, I forgot we're on the presentation. Sorry, here's the Bar Hill again. Forgot to change cameras. This is the Bar Hill. Thanks, Courtney. Again, made in Vermont, small distillery, and they add honey back into it. So that would fit the bill not only for modern gin, but also gin that allows you to put some sweeteners back into it. This was the Patagonian one because I don't think the camera was on yet. So it's called Bubbly. I don't think it's in this country yet. But there is actually a really cool thing called Tracal. It's a Patagonian spirit that is essentially a brandy. It's made from apples and pears that essentially have fallen off the tree. So super ripe apples and pears. They make an unaged brandy, which in and of itself is a juxtaposition in terms. And then they add in a bunch of Patagonian botanicals. So this is a botanical spirit that's not gin, right? Because you can make gin from apples and pears, but you still have to be predominantly juniper. One thing to note is that London dry gin does not actually have to be made in London. That used to be the case, but it is a category in and of itself. There are French that make London dry gin. There are Spaniards that make London dry gin. It's mostly about no added sugar, strong juniper forward, and in the style that most gins were made at the beginning. This is another interesting one. It's called Wonderbird. It is from the Mississippi Delta, and it's made out of rice. It is a rice distillate. So it falls not only under modern gin, but you can see here it is also cask finished. So this is a 50% ABV, and it's put into a bourbon barrel to finish it. So you'll see it has a little bit of color. Put that card behind it so you can see there's some color there. It's not perfectly clear. And it ends up being a really unique product.
So Donna, is what makes something a gin the botanicals that are added? Is that what makes it gin?
Yeah, it needs to be a distilled spirit with botanicals in it, but it has to have juniper, otherwise it's not gin. So you can even make a really cool gin out of agave, right? So there are mezcal gins, there are agave gins that are unsmoked, and they still add botanicals into them. And there's one company that actually made a gin out of multiple different mezcal, and that also had botanicals. So it had crazy layers, 9 different mezcal in it. This is one from China called Peddler's Gin Co. And I think a lot of these things, like if you're familiar with Bombay Sapphire, on the side of that very iconic blue square rectangular bottle are these etches of all of the botanicals and where they're from in the world. So one of the really cool things about gin also is there's very much a sense of place, right? So for example, this Peddler's Gin is they listed as Shanghai Craft Gin, Angelica almonds, juniper, East Asian mint, Buddha's hand, Sichuan peppers, cubeb berries, Chinese cassia, which is like cinnamon, coriander seeds, orris root, licorice. So, 90% of these are very common gin botanicals, but these are all things that come from China, that these particular products come from China. So it really gives you a cool sense of place. Last but not least, we have multiple things. We have things that are made from multiple sources. This is actually from here in Oakland, where I'm based. And it was called Osco, Oakland Spirits Company. It is now unfortunately no longer in existence. But what they did, a very cool thing, is they made everything out of California grapes. So if I were to pop this into a barrel and give it some age, it actually would be a brandy, right? But what they did is instead they kept it unaged and they added some really cool botanicals into it, including for one of the projects they did, oyster shells. And it was fascinating, like had some salinity to it. And I mean, you could just drink it on its own, but you throw that into like a gin and tonic or make a 50-50 martini, mind blown.
Yeah. So this is like a terroir. Once you said that, it reminds us of place. It puts us in the place, and you can really respect where the ingredients are coming from.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up terroir, Courtney. It's an important word here. So, for example, here also in the Bay Area in Alameda, which is a little island, off the coast here of Oakland, there is a distillery called St. George, and y'all can look that up. They have they've been making spirits since the early '80s, and they've sort of morphed over time to do other things. But one of the things they make that's one of my favorites. They have like a cult following for their whiskeys. They're just crazily, like absurdly amazing and hard to find. But they make a gin called terroir. And it's literally the terroir of the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, right? Yep. So you have, pine from Mount Tam and juniper berries that grow everywhere, like on my block even. And it's a super fascinating way to taste an area. So, for example, there are London dry gins that are made in London or made in Scotland that have things from all over Europe, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in a global economy at this point where if you're in the US right now, you're probably eating grapes from Chile, right? Okay. I was there on the first day of fall, which to us in the Northern Hemisphere is the first day of spring. So it's kind of crazy, right? They're opposite. So it's interesting when people make great gins that have a sense of place, but also have botanicals from different places in the world. The two best examples I would give for that are Bombay Sapphire and Ford's gin. It's Ford's without an apostrophe. It's really easy to find now. But that was a really special gin made by bartenders for bartenders and has blown up globally at this point. And it's a great bottle to, when you're done with the gin, soak the label off because it has markers on it. It has grip marks on it. So if you're making cocktails at home or you want to store things, it has measuring. It's really a very cool, or every aspect of that product was thought out.
That is fascinating. And speaking of wanting to know like the place and it being very special to that place, one of our participants wants to know. So if you aren't near a metropolitan area, would that matter on like how you could source these different types of gins, or maybe even make your own?
You could actually do some soaking on your own. I would recommend that you do it with a higher proof spirit. You're going to get more out of it. You have to be really careful with extracts. Don't use. Sorry, you have to be very careful with extraction because certain things, alcohol will pull the oils and the essences out of it faster. Things that are usually very potent for you are going to be the same things that the alcohol will extract more quickly. Like basil, sage, rosemary, those kinds of things pull very quickly. And you'll see, for those of you who were imbibing in the 80s, you'll remember that a bunch of back bars all had, vodka with things in them, right? And they would sit up there forever. And so you could put watermelon in something and the liquid at the end is going to be amazing. If you pull the watermelon out and eat it, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be all the ethanol and all the fusel oil, all the things. But the liquid that you've infused is going to be great. But that's something you can have sit for a very long time. If you do that with peppercorn, for example, if you do that over 8 to 12 hours or 24 hours, depending what you're using, you will not be able to drink it because at that point you may as well use it in drops. It's going to be insanely peppery and hot, right? So luckily we have this online resource called the interwebs, and we can look at those things up. There are people, the terroir gin, for example, that I have at St. George, they do the extracts for all of their botanicals separately, and then they blend them, right? So this thing extracts faster and is more potent, and we need less of it. So they do all the distillates separately and then blend the distillates at the end for the final gin.
I'll just add, we'll get a little bit of this kind of practice in the third series when we're making mead with me. And so you'll sort of get that experience of like, oh, this fruit is giving all of its flavor to the alcohol, but at the end of that process, the fruit itself is not really that tasty.
Yes, and also not recommended. We used to do at the Tonga Room, if any of you have been to San Francisco, the Tonga Room is a very famous tropical bar that's in the basement of the Fairmont Hotel. And they, lychee martinis were really popular, and we just wanted to make a good one for the revamping of the new menu back in 2013. And so we used to, Michael got engaged in the Tonga Room. Wow. That's cool.
Full circle. Very cool.
Yeah. So we would make a lychee martini with actual lychee and would throw in to the distillate, and they'd be sitting there. And so one of the things that we did to warn the guests was that it had the boozy lychee. So they would be the garnish, but we would warn people, you may actually get tipsy either from the drink in the V martini glass or from that one lychee. Because the lychee had been sitting in, 44% ABV vodka for a week at a time, and it really soaked that in there. So you have to be careful with those kinds of garnishes. It's very fun and it's very tasty, but they can knock you on your tush. Okay, so very briefly through this that we can dive into making. Gin can be made from a lot of different things. So the more common ones are grains that people know. Sorghum is not as common, but you'll find that in a lot of things that are trying to sell themselves as gluten-free. A lot of gluten-free beers are made from sorghum. Technically, unless you are a crazy level of celiac, any distilled spirit that doesn't have anything added back into it is gluten-free. So whether you buy Tito's that has gluten-free written all over it, or you're buying a local vodka, unless they're doing something weird like adding something back in, distilled spirits are gluten-free, even if they are made from things that are very glutinous. Maker's Mark is gluten-free. People think that like only clear spirits. It is not the case. Unless someone has thrown some sort of gluten thing back in, you're good to go. Of course, ask your doctor first. Potato is the thing that people know. Agave, I mentioned earlier, is something that you can make. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are pretty common also in shochu, which is a Japanese spirit. You'll find barley, you'll find rice, and you'll find sweet potato, and they're amazing. And then beet. I've seen beet distillates with botanicals that are really amazing. And one of the really cool botanicals that they used was horseradish. And so it like almost tasted like borscht before you even started the cocktail. It was like, if you like a Gibson, which is dry martini with with an olive, an olive garnish. Sometimes people will put a little brine in there as well. A Gibson with that beet distillate is insane. With a little bit of horseradish, insane. And then of course fruits, grape, apple, plums, and then again I wrote et cetera, because it really just goes on and on. Anything that has sugar or starch, you can distill.
So we have a question from the audience. Yeah. Can you make Irish poutine at home? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Because
it's poutine.
Poutine.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And much like Shawn described in session 1A, you can make it. Your house is going to smell pretty awesome. I mean, anything that you ferment and distill inside a space, you need to make sure that you can air it out, because depending on the heat that you're using, if it's gas, it's going to have an exhaust, but they're going to be vapors and they can potentially make you really high. So make sure that you have plenty of ventilation, and then of course you are distilling legally. Can't emphasize that enough. And not just because this is a government website. It's really important. There are major safety concerns that go beyond just Googling things. So, but yeah, poutine is really amazing. And I know that I'm also not pronouncing it correctly. I can say Sinead, but I don't know if I'm pronouncing poutine. Either way. Okay. All right, let's go to botanicals. Great. So, juniper berries in gin have to be predominant, but gin essentially equals flavored vodka, right? So this is a thing that's very fun when you're at the bar. One of my favorite things to do, and this goes to Shaker and Spoon as well, because we get to talk to, tens of thousands of people every month. I love when someone says, I never liked gin until I had that cocktail you made me. I never liked mezcal until I got the mezcal box from Shaker and Spoon. I never liked vodka. I always thought it was boring until I had that brunch box, right? That is my favorite thing, like changing hearts and minds. And it happens most, I think, with tequila and gin. People had a rough experience when they were, of course, 21, but when they were younger, they had a rough experience with gin and tequila, and they can't even smell it anymore. There are always winners. I think my favorite cocktail for people to enjoy for tequila, as in terms of a baby steps cocktail, is the margarita, and it is one of the most popular cocktails on earth. I would recommend that you try the Tommy's margarita version, which is almost like a daiquiri version of a margarita. 3 ingredients: tequila, fresh lime, and that's key, and agave syrup, right? So I always recommend 2 1 3/4 or 2 1/2, depending on how sweet you want that. That's 2 tequila, 1 fresh lime, and 1/2 to 3/4 of agave syrup. Not agave nectar, but agave syrup. So it already has the water in there. And then with gin, I would say try and do a Southside Fizz. That is essentially a mojito, but with gin, and usually with lemon instead of lime. So if you like a mojito and you've always been and you love mint, and you've always kind of been like iffy on gin, go for a Southside Fizz. It may change your universe, right? So the botanicals are things that are same. Herbs, spices, fruits, vegetables, flowers. Nuts is a funny one. There are like almond and like hazelnut gins out there. For those who, were thinking about what I said earlier about distilled spirits with gluten, depending on how the botanical is used, if it's a vapor infused, you may not have an issue. But for those who have like tree nut allergies, if you see a gin that has, you know, almond or walnut or something like that, something that you would normally be allergic to, please be careful. Even if it is vapor infused, it may still be something that can cause an allergic reaction. But the common things that you see, I put a lot of things on here that are common. So although for fruits, we could also be talking about, you know, strawberries, tomato, the big one under fruits is going to be citrus. And sometimes people will even do citrus as another category of botanicals, but it really still does fall under fruit. Like Tanqueray actually has an orange version of Tanqueray. It's really amazing, right? Where they're actually using like orange fruit in the sack that they use. It's basically like an enormous tea bag that they drop into distillation. So anybody that says like, I don't really not, you know, I'm not a real gin person, I'm more of a vodka person, you'd be like, oh, I have this really awesome flavored vodka that you might like. It's flavored with coriander, orris root, and juniper, right? And they may say, hey, listen, I don't really like juniper. You're like, okay, cool. I have this other great flavored vodka that happens to be an organic gin out of Colorado that is made with apples. That's made fully out of apples. And it's still really light on juniper, but it's the kind of thing that I love to convert, you know, vodka only drinkers to gin drinkers all the time. Ice is really important. So same when you go to a recipe somewhere and it says, you know, 2 ounces of gin, this much syrup, this much this much that. If they say fresh lime, use fresh lime. If you're using bottled lime, keep in mind, if that's all you can get, no big whoop. Just keep in mind that you may have to sweeten the drink up a little bit because bottled lime can also be have additional ascorbic or citric acid in it to preserve it, which is a natural preservative, but can also really be crazily acidic, which means you'll have to sweeten the drink a little bit. So don't dive into recipes blindly, and the same goes with ice, right? If you read a recipe that says shake for 15 seconds, you're already on, you know, I was going to say thin ice. You're already on shaky ground, right? So type of ice does matter. If you have a very boozy drink and you are serving 30 people and there's, you know, a big crowd, it's a party or you're behind a bar or something, then using this ice that you see on the right is what I call hotel ice. It's kind of chip ice. It's not great ice. That's really good to use because it will dilute and chill with the shake very quickly and allow me to get the drinks out more quick, right? The one on the left here that you're seeing in the big picture is it's more dense ice. It's not clear ice, but it's very similar to what I have in my freezer, which is almost like this pebble ice, but this is like nicer, more dense pebble ice. And what you see in the upper left here is what we call clear ice, but it's also a jumbo cube. So if you're doing an old fashioned, you know, this gentleman here said that he really enjoys Scotch whiskey and old fashioned. So for those who like old fashions or like sipping something on the rock or on the rocks, I would recommend trying to find these fun molds. They're really cool, and you can keep them in a section of your freezer. And if you entertain often, you will look so awesome. People will be very impressed if you hand them a glass with this kind of ice cube in it. And yeah, they're really easy to make and keep. You have to have like a directional freezing kit if you want it to be clear, or you can do something like a small igloo and then just go to town carving it yourself, right? Definitely watch a video on that. Definitely wear gloves and make sure that you have like a big serrated knife, almost like a bread knife, because that'll usually, for the most part, keep your fingers on your hand.
We'll need to drink after that.
Yeah. One thing that I want to be really clear on. So I'm using here, let me go to camera 2 real quick. There's camera 2. So what I'm using here are just standard tins. Just want you to see inside. I'm going to go back to main camera so you can see that. Right here they are next to each other, top, bottom. I usually like to construct in the bottom if you have a smaller tin, because once that goes into the larger tin and you shake, if the volume is greater than this, you may have an issue when you're trying to seal it, right? So always construct in this guy. Especially if you're making multiple drinks, you want to make sure that nothing's going to explode, right? For ice, there's no such thing as how long do you shake, right? The answer to that, and I want you to all hear this and say it with me because it's going to come up a couple more times. When somebody asks you, how long do you shake or stir? The answer is till it's cold. Okay. I'm in a room right now that's probably an ambient 67, right? If I'm using kind of blah ice, it's still going to melt pretty quickly. If I'm shaking, it's definitely going to melt quickly because of the agitation. If I want something to be diluted, and all I have is that clear ice I showed you before, like jumbo cubes, those are going to take longer. So you either can take your bar spoon like this and snap the ice in your hand and like break it into pieces, or you can break it up into a couple pieces, put it in the shaker. Keep in mind, it's still going to be harder to break up if you're in a cold room and you really want some dilution, right? You'll also make sure to not shake this next to your ear. I wore earplugs for years. Most of it was for music where I worked, but I also kept them in when people started using what was called Hoshizaki or really fancy 1x1 cubes. Cold Draft is another machine, Cold Draft with a K. When you shake those things next to your ear, you will be half deaf by the end of the night. So if you're accustomed to shaking over the right ear or the left ear, make sure that you either do it in front of you, like Japanese style, or that you give yourself some ear protection, because the better the ice is, the deafer you're going to be, right? Little tidbits that you didn't know you were going to get today.
I was not ready. I'm learning about occupational hazards as we are making these drinks. Very cool.
Yeah. So, yes, ice is important, and it should also be factored in. The same goes for syrups and things like that. If somebody says like simple syrup, make sure that you're actually making it 1-to-1. We'll get to that. If someone says agave syrup versus agave nectar, they do mean agave nectar with water added, and it's not always 1-to-1, right? People make things different, make their agave nectars differently. It's pretty crazy. Pineapple juice. So like if, for example, you were to have the shaker and spoon kit, what you're going to get is you're going to get like a little dole. It'll say 100% pineapple juice. It shouldn't have sugar added or anything like that. If you look at the ingredients, there should be nothing in it other than pineapple juice and maybe ascorbic acid, right? They'll do that for not only so they can say vitamin C, but also it's a great preservative. If you're able to get fresh pineapple juice, it is night and day. But if all you have is sealed something like Dole, you're fine. The one thing that I highly recommend against is anything that has added sugar. You definitely don't want that. If it has any other ingredients other than ascorbic acid or citric acid, I would avoid that. And stuff that's in a plastic bottle is usually not great either unless it's refrigerated, right? So just things to keep your eyes peeled. Most of the Dole, even if you're in Hawaii, if you're on vacation in Hawaii and their pineapples grow in Maui, but those pineapples are $20. So I guarantee you that whatever hotel you're staying at, whatever drink you're drinking, whatever it's a pina colada or whatever, they're not using Maui pineapples unless your cocktail is also $20. So they're most likely using Dole, and it's most likely from Thailand or the Philippines. And it's all
as long as it
very
says,
good.
for the most part, sorry, Dänny, for the most part, as long as it says 100% fruit juice.
100% pineapple juice, yes.
100% pineapple juice.
That's right.
We should be in decent shape.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
You don't want it sweetened with apple juice or anything like that. It's not bad for you. It just may throw off the flavor. So this is one that is not as important as some of the other factors. The beer vinegar, same thing. This is something that these guys tin made specially for us. Here's the little bottle that would come to you in your cocktail kit. And I'm thirsty, so I'm gonna drink some of it right now.
Ah.
Oh my God, that is so good. So
does it have a more vinegary? Is it more vinegar or beer when you tasted it?
So vinegar is vinegar is vinegar. Let me take you back over to this thing. So here's my joke. Why the sour face? Yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay. Because you just drank vinegar. So vinegar can also be made from multiple things. And again, I could have easily filled this page and run out of space just listing the fruit ones, right? So ACV is apple cider vinegar, right? So that's going to be tangier, a little bit sweeter, and super effervescent. And I love using it. If, for example, this goes, connecting back to Shawn's session 1A and what we're going to be discussing throughout 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B. If you are making a cocktail that asks for lemon or lime juice and you've run out of lemon or lime juice, or you didn't realize that it had gone bad, or you had 3 limes and you needed 4, you can balance out the citrus in a cocktail using apple cider vinegar. It is a really cool little trick of the trade. You don't want to do that much because then your drink will taste vinegary. But as long as you are balancing out, you can absolutely do that. Sorry, I noticed that Darlene asked, can you use malt vinegar as a substitute? Beer vinegar is malt vinegar, right? So what are you talking about in terms of malt? Or talking about it in terms of beer, you're talking about water, grain, hops at certain levels, and malt, like malted barley, right? That's your grain, right? So beer vinegar, in its essence, is malt vinegar. So there's a difference between, like, if I taste this versus going, let me go back to that. If I taste this little guy here, this beer vinegar from tin, as opposed to the malt vinegar that you would get if you're having like fish and chips in like an English pub, they're going to be similar. But this one's just going to have a few more layers to it, like the beer vinegar. But always taste it. Again, taste is subjective, and you may find ones that you really like. For salads, champagne vinegar is great. Balsamic can be overpowering, but it's a very distinct flavor and it's delicious. And that is the reason it's under fruit, is because I think people don't know that it's actually made from grape must, right? So it's like the leftovers, the remainder of when you're crushing grapevines, it comes from the must, which is what we use to make grappa, right? So balsamic vinegar is amazing, but a little goes a long way. If you were doing, for example, strawberry gin cocktail with fresh lemon and use some sort of sweetener and balsamic vinegar, your head's going to blow apart. It's going to be so good, right? That's Flavor Bible 101 right there. Strawberry, balsamic vinegar always go well together. And if you've never had that, please, please, for the love of all that is holy, get yourself fresh strawberries and good balsamic. Do a little drizzle. It will change your life.
Hey, Dänny, what can we do? I know we're going through our ingredients and we're getting ready for our equipment check. Is there anything that we need to do to make sure that we have everything that we need while you're wrapping this part up? I know something about
I'm going to skip ahead really quickly to the equipment. You definitely need your shaker top and bottom, which is what I showed before. A jigger and a strainer, and I'll come back to me on that one. Your jigger and your strainer. This is a Japanese jigger. I like these the most because, as you can see inside, there are lines in there that have measurement marks. So I have my quarter, my half, my 3/4, and then all the way to the top is 1. And then here I have a 1.5, and then all the way to the top is 2, right? The 1.5 comes in handy because there's a lot of cocktails that require a 1.5 base or a 2 base for the drink. Strainer, you can use really any. I prefer Hawthorne, and I like this little one. They're made by OXO, like that makes a lot of kitchen equipment. You can find ones that are off-brand and these are very easy to handle and easy to control, and they've got that little grip in there. I find them to be great, and they're not ones that have really long stems, and they're not bothersome that way. A spoon is helpful because then you can. Sometimes you're measuring things and you'll see with the coconut oil. That's very helpful. The one thing that I did forget, sorry, Zach asked about vinegar gluten-free. Right. It has to be listed as gluten-free because it is not distilled. It's purely fermented, right? But there are a lot of gluten-free vinegars. Just keep an eye peeled. So let me go back to this guy. If you do not have a shaker, a strainer, or a jigger, fear not. They should be, they're relatively inexpensive. And I think, Shawn, on your site, do you have a list for equipment?
Yeah, there are. And there's some links to some kits and things.
That's right. And when you follow those links to the kits and things like that, along with the kits, there are also really great equipment that have been curated for you. So 0 to 60, you've never done this before, you've done it a zillion times before, you're going to be in really good hands with the equipment that's recommended there. The one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is if you have coconut oil at home, any coconut oil will do, but I almost forgot before we started, and I sat on my bottle of coconut oil because if it's not warm, it's going to be a solid form, right? You don't need that much for this particular cocktail. So really, if you want to, you can take a cup with water, put it in your microwave for 60 seconds, and then, put a little, put whatever container you have in there. And what'll happen is it'll mostly be solid white, and then there'll be a little liquid on the top or a little liquid on the bottom. We really just need a small amount. Normally what we would do for this cocktail is what's called fat washing, which is a really cool method that we won't take time on today. You guys can message me afterwards for that, and I'll send you some really cool videos that make it very easy. But what it does is when you add something like this, like oil, or if any of you, again, who like old fashions or whiskey have ever had a cocktail with bacon fat wash, it's pretty incredible, right? So what it does is it adds some texture to the drink. Let me go back over here. It adds viscosity, mouthfeel, oil, like oily, smooth, well-rounded. And of course, it smells amazing because it's going to smell like fresh coconut or toasted coconut. I would recommend, if you are doing this, not only for, if you're using it as a mouth rinse, if you're doing it as something for baking, or if you're using it for cocktails, look for toasted coconut oil, right? No, it should only be, like, if you look at the ingredients should just say pure virgin organic coconut oil. It shouldn't have any other things in it, but if you can find one that's toasted, man, that adds a really incredible extra layer to your drink. For those who do not have this cordial on hand, this is, this is one of the things that was in that kit that's listed on Shawn's site. You can go check that out. Shawn, if you want to pop the link into the chat, that would be super helpful for people. But everything that you see here is what's in the cordial, right? I want to really briefly talk about syrups because, again, if you're looking at a recipe and it says rosemary syrup, they're not difficult to make. The thing that people do is I think they make a syrup and then throw the thing in. What you should really do is think about it in terms of tea. I want to do hot water and an extraction of this thing, of this flavor that I'm looking for, and then clear out all of the, strain it out, fine strain, what have you, and then take that hot water, take the exact amount of regular granulated white sugar or organic sugar, and you put those together, and that will be your that'll be your syrup, right? So think about it mathematically. If you have a really cool red rooibos tea and you want to make a syrup out of it, you're like, ooh, this tea is really good. And whenever you actually make tea out of it and you put a little honey in it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. Steep something that's going to be very flavorful with that tea. Take the tea bag out, make sure that it's fully strained, and then measure that exact amount of tea that you have, put that exact same amount of granulated white sugar into a third container, and that will be your red rooibos tea syrup. That is the easiest and most simplistic way to make anything, right? If you want to do rosemary, throw rosemary into hot water until you taste it and you're like, oh, that is very potently rosemary. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's not going to be overpowering, but you should taste the rosemary. And then same thing, strain the rosemary out, make sure that there's no little bits in there because that's a great way for your syrup to go bad more quickly. and then you do the exact same amount of sugar, of white granulated sugar or organic sugar. You just want to make sure, and even that technically is not exact. Technically, you should do it by weight, because the brown granulated sugar is going to have more little gaps of air than smaller grain white granulated sugar. So, but if you do that method that I'm talking about, you use the same container, and you go all the way to the top with tea, and then the same container all the way to the top with white granulated sugar, and you dump it into a third container. That will be a 1-to-1 simple syrup of whatever flavor you're trying to make.
It's an incredible pro tip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's really simple, but it's also so simple to screw it up. That's why simple syrup is a very funny term to me. So a cordial is a syrup that will usually have some kind of, fruit or citrus in it. So this has a bunch of spices, and you can make all these things on your own. For the purposes of today, if you do not have this prepped, no worries. You can always go to Shawn's site and again, find that, the Wavy Colada kit. But for today, if you just want to do simple syrup and maybe like throw clove into the shaker, throw a little like citrus into the shaker. If you have grapefruit juice or honey, like really what you want to do is have a syrup that is balanced, and you can throw some of these other things in, right? And again, you can message me. I'll be more than happy to show you how to make things like this on your own. It'll really blow your guests' socks off for all the stuff that you can make on your own, right? You can always buy it. And one of the funny things is we had a blueberry cinnamon syrup that was in a cocktail for like a spritz that we did sort of right in the middle of the pandemic. I think it was June of 20. And it was crazy popular. And we showed videos on how to make it and everything like that. And people were making it at home. Then they would still come back and buy it because they're like, okay, my version was good. I had to get my kitchen professionally cleaned afterward between like all the blueberries and the mess and the cooking and whatever. And I'm like, hey, don't turn your kitchen into a production facility. We have one of those, like help us help you. But we also we don't need to gatekeep how to make syrups. We really want people to learn how to make stuff on their own and use us as a platform to experiment more. There's always going to be stuff that maybe you want to pick up somewhere else, but for the most part, like learn how to make it on your own, and then you can figure out what version you like better. All right, it is same thing if you don't have the shaker, whatever, you can use Tupperware. Anything that really seals can't be like a whatever seal, it has to be a real seal. Spatula or a wide spoon you can use as a strainer, and then measuring spoons are great if you don't have a jigger. So like I have a small version of a jigger as well, which is this little guy right here, but you can absolutely use measuring spoons. 1 tablespoon is half an ounce, right? So if something calls for 2 ounces, no problem, use 4 tablespoons. If something calls for 1/4 of an ounce, use a half a tablespoon. It's a really easy conversion method is tablespoons, right? Oh, great. Thank you. Someone posted the fat wash thing. Great. This one is like, okay, I'll send you some other ones. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Now we're going to actually, sorry, go ahead, Courtney.
No, I was just getting excited because it almost looks like the shake and make time. Sorry, just getting excited.
No problem. We are at shake and make time because we're going to need some time to have people chat about this. So I'm going to grab my number 3. I'm going to change over to, can somebody post the recipe from the earlier slide into the chat so everyone can see it, and then I will change to camera 2.
Well, the great thing is the recipe is in our handout. So if they go to the handout section and they download it, they should be able to have their own personal copy right away.
Great.
And Shawn has also put the link in there so they can see the recipe. And I just get to live vicariously through you all because I'm still at work while you all get to enjoy your baths.
Fantastic. I'm going to lift this up here so you can see it a little better. Great.
Dänny, do you have any suggestions in making the Wavy Colada a mocktail?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple ways you can do that. Gin is one of the better things that you can get your hands on in a non-alc format. I'm gonna talk to you while I'm making the drink so that we can move forward.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I do have the ability to do that sometimes. Walk and talk. So I'm gonna do 2 ounces of my gin here. Let me move this over here.
There we go.
Do 2 ounces of my gin. Now, something that I want to show you guys. Let me move this over a little bit more so you can actually see the jigger. Now, this is not going to be 2 ounces until it is really all the way to the top. See that? That is still not full. I want it to where I'm doing it to the meniscus, right? So it really is it's spilled a little bit, but like I would rather that than accidentally do 1 3/4 ounces, right? Recipes for cocktails really involve balance, and it's extremely important to have the drink balance. There is a product called Seedlip Garden 108, and it is one of the best, I think, on the market still, non-alc gins. And in addition to really capturing botanicals, they did a good job with the weight of the product, and that's something that's really missing when it comes to non-alc drinks. Is the weight of the alcohol itself. I'm going to give the pineapple a shake. That's really important. Crack that open.
Shawn, we see you getting it together there too.
Right.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I did have a little bit of time to fat wash my gin. It wasn't the longest process, but this is I poured the coconut oil in and then put it back in the fridge, and this was the coconut oil that I skimmed off the top.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can you put on your camera real quick so people can see that?
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So this was I ate a little bit of it because I was kind of hungry and it was really tasty.
Yeah,
but I was
and
just
that's kind of the fun thing with it. And the same thing if you're doing like a bacon fat wash or something like that. First of all, what they always forget is it really needs to be extra smoked bacon. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You're just going for viscosity, and you're not going to get what's really cool about that drink, and that's the smokiness. Same thing like the toasted coconut. That's why it's so important. But you can take like that disc that Shawn had, that piece, and you can actually use that to cook again, right? So it's still oil, it's still fat. You can use it to cook, and it'll be depending on what you fat washed it with. You're going to get the botanicals out of the gin, or you're going to get some sweetness out of rum, or you're going to get some sweetness out of tequila, or whatever it is that you use to fat wash. It's pretty cool when you throw it back in. You can't, liquid smoke is going to be a little overpowering. It depends on the volume. I'd be really careful with that, and would potentially get, like one of the things that we have in our Make More store when we're trying to like get funky is a mezcal aromatizer where you'd spray a little bit of mezcal in there. That wouldn't help for those who are trying to do non-alc. That wouldn't really help in terms of the smokiness. But for non-alc, Jenny, I would recommend that you try either Seedlip Garden 108, or there's one that's called Cut Above Gin. The weight is not there yet in terms of like the viscosity of the spirit, but man, it really makes a great gin cocktail. So highly recommend it. All right, so I'm going to do my 1/2 ounce of my beer vinegar. And same thing, make sure you shake that before, because vinegars will settle. And then I'm going to do 1 ounce of my spiced cordial. Now, fun little thing that I sometimes like to do is I'll do my sweetest item in the jigger first, because then I can use the other things like citrus or the alcohol to rinse out the jigger, which is really fun. Now, one of the reasons why it's really good to use 100% pineapple juice and not something else in there is because, for example, this cordial, the spiced citrus cordial, is not crazy sweet. It's actually like tangy and has all the spices in it that we listed earlier. And so you really want to make sure that you're going to have a balanced drink. And cachaça is going to be a little sweeter than gin is anyway. So that might be something where you're like, oh, maybe I'll try the Bar Hill gin because it has a little honey in it. Or maybe I'll put a little bit more of the cordial in it. Or maybe I'll put a little bit more of the pineapple juice. The best thing is to follow recipes as is and then figure out once you're at the end of that, you're like, oh, this needs a little bit more of such and such, and you can adjust to your own taste. But try and stick to recipes as is, and then once you get to know maybe that writer or that bartender or whoever gave you that recipe, that like, oh, hey, they do it a little bit more dry or they do it a little bit more sweet, you can constantly adjust the recipes to your liking. One other really cool thing that I'm going to show you is this fun ice. So this is my ice that I have in my freezer at home. It's called, it's known as pebble ice. And you can see based on just size-wise, they're these little pebbles, right? Different than Sonic ice. Sonic ice really is its own thing. And if you have a Sonic near you and you're having a party and you're doing like rum cocktails or something like that, go to Sonic and buy a bag of ice. Like they will sell you like these little nugget ice. It's really amazing, and it's great for like quick dilution and for cocktails you want to froth. So what I'm going to do is, here's a little one of the glass tricks, and this is why I wrote here, prep your glass, let's talk ice. I'm going to do it in this cool, this is called like a double old-fashioned glass. It's a 13-ounce old-fashioned glass. A really great way to know how much ice to put in the shaker, so you can just dump the whole thing at the end, or make sure you have the right amount of liquid, is what I call pre-measuring. So what I'll do is I will put almost all the way to the top with the ice. And again, all ice is different, and some ice is going to break up. This one is going probably about that, right? So almost to the top. That is what's going to go into my shaker. So if I wanted to, I could, in fact, shake this drink and just dump it into the glass. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to take fresh pebble ice and I'm going to put it in there. And we're going to see how the experiment works. I'm going to step back so that you can actually see the full shake here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, there's a certain technique I see you doing. It's not just like a wuff.
That's right.
It's a no, right?
And people, how long are we shaking?
Until it's cold.
Thank you very much. 2 points for Courtney. All right. So make sure it's sealed. Hands on top, hand on bottom. Most importantly, smile when you make it. Watch, feel for the temperature, and try. That's all in caps. Try. If you spill, no big deal, right? So, Shawn, I want you to put one hand on the bottom and one hand on the top. You really, like, especially with something with citrus in it, you really want to agitate it. So you want to do like an up down. Okay? I want to hear that shake. So I'm going to do, yeah. Great. So you want it like mine I stopped because it's really cold to the touch. You can see how I have condensation on there.
Condensation already, yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually lower this so that you can see.
Yeah.
Right? And I am going to strain because I did put fresh ice on it. God, that smells so good. Putting this guy in here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can imagine how wonderful it smells.
I'm just going to add a little bit of that, right? So I didn't do the fat wash on it because I wanted it to be pretty pronounced. And keep in mind, if you are making multiple drinks and one of them has something like a fat wash in it, all of your other stuff is going to smell and taste like that until you really rinse out, like with hot water, to get the oil out. I'll do this guy right here so that you can see that.
And now, Donnie, I noticed that you didn't shake up the beverage anymore once you put the oil in it. So you kind of just let the oil be on the top and then pour
I just gave it a little jiggle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So normally I would actually put it into the tin. I just really wanted to show it once the camera angle was down here so you could see it.
Okay.
Now there's a couple fun things that you can do here. You can, if you have like a whole lemon or a whole orange or a whole grapefruit, you can always do a peel on that and then spray it over the top and have it as a nice garnish. Now, this cocktail had, here are our ingredients again, right? What might I garnish this with?
A pineapple.
Right? Right. Pineapple is great. I could also, inside my spiced citrus cordial is lime, honey, grapefruit, lemon, like lemon zest. So having a lemon zest over the top, even if I don't use it as a garnish, is a really easy thing to do, right? So Karen wrote coconut as well. You absolutely could do like a fun coconut. What I would do, which would be fun, let me move back over here, is I would actually potentially, if I had a fresh pineapple that I was using, I would use potentially some pineapple fronds, right? It's a really cool way to have it look great. Let me go back here.
Oh, we even
so
have
imagine this thing where I had two pineapple fronds like that coming out, and then I took a lemon zest and I zested over the top, but then I discarded the lemon. This whole thing is going to smell like fresh lemon and coconut. And then the fronds would just be something fun visual to look at. But I could just as easily put a pineapple wedge on the edge. You can go a zillion different ways. It's called the Wavy Colada, right? So it is, in fact, a colada. Now I'm going to stop talking so we can actually taste.
Oh, fantastic. Who in the chat is actually shaking up with us? And how is it? How is it? Would anybody like to come on? We can invite you on stage real quick before we close out this evening. We still got a little bit of time. So if there's anyone who wants to show off what you got, let us know. We're happy to invite you on stage.
It's a really unique cocktail.
It's got some nice, it's a real balance of the sweet and the tart. That spice is coming in there. It's really smooth.
And it's a beautiful drink, though. I love that nice caramel color. It just brings sweet and comfort and fun.
Yeah, it's, I mean, something to think about is this cocktail is, you have the beer vinegar, which is a darker color. You have the shaker and spoon cordial, which is a darker color. And then the pineapple juice is going to make it, is going to keep it from being, transparent no matter what, right? It's going to be generally opaque, but it's going to give it like a yellowish brown color. And that's why doing something that's like bright and beautiful as a garnish can really like change the visual appeal of the drink. Okay. Can you get the Wavy Colada at a bar in DC? I mean, quite frankly, there are great bars in DC. For the same amount, you can go to Shawn's site, and he's got a link for where you can get it literally sent to you at home. However, at places, I think Service Bar in DC is like, it's on the 50 best list at this point. That place is amazing. If you like hotel bars, oh my God, what is that place called? Same thing. I can have a whole list for you. So if you message me after, I can send you a list of great places to go where you are. At the end of the day, you just need to find someone who is creative, inventive, and loves guests, right? They want to make you something that's fun, right? Yeah. I think while we still have time, we should try and pair this, Shawn, with the kraut.
I am already here. I have a bite ready for myself.
Okay.
I'd be really curious to hear what others think in the chat if you've got both. But to me, there's like, the kraut has that really kind of sour bite to it. Right. And the caraway seeds are, I have this visual of like, they're kind of bringing me back to earth. They're very earthy. And they have a kind of, not quite a bitter, but almost a musky quality. And then the drink is like floating me back up. It's kind of opening me where the kraut is like narrow, but it's a really beautiful pair because they're complementing each other. There's like a Venn diagram.
Yin yang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's really cool about, I think what a lot of people try to do is they try to make drink flavors in parallel, right? And what you really want to do is you want to go perfectly perpendicular. You want taste, you want flavors that the things that pair well the most are things that almost conflict, right? So acid and base, sweet and savory, right? So the drink in and of itself I think it's going to weird some people out because it's not what they expect, right? There's a bunch of sweet things that went into it. They're like, oh, it's going to be a sweet drink. However, again, also depending on the gin that you used, you have savory elements in there. The vinegar is acidic and savory, right? Because it's malty, right? The cordial is not super sweet. It's a cordial and it has, sugar and honey, and it also has citrus peel, which is tannic, and it also has the spices in it, which are tannic, particularly clove and cinnamon, right? So all these flavors, and then of course the pineapple is acidic and sweet. So really what this tastes like to me with this particular gin is a luau. It literally tastes like grilled meat. So for those who are vegetarian but meat curious, awesome drink for you, right? It doesn't taste like actual meat, but it's like smoky and earthy, and it has a savory quality that's umami beyond just, mushrooms, right?
Yes.
So take something like that and then combine it with, or pair it with something like a sauerkraut, which again, tangy, puckery, like as Shawn was saying, can really sort of close you off. All of a sudden, the little tiny bit of sweetness that's in here is explosive.
Wow.
I have guests coming over after this, and I feel like I'm going to be able to really delight and surprise them with a little dish and a little cocktail glass.
Yeah. And you were using a really unique gin as well. You were using a coriander forward, or was it a cardamom forward?
It's true. I have this special cardamom, turmeric, and sun-dried mandarin gin from London.
So, the long story short is experiment with cocktails. Look for flavors that pair well with each other. Highly recommend the Flavor Bible that goes for cooking and for cocktails. And so the one overlapping thing here between the kraut and the cocktail is the vinegar. So there isn't vinegar in the kraut. It's natural fermentation. But then I took vinegar, which is the universal fermenter, and I put some of that in this cocktail. And it's such a great way for these drinks to these flavors to complement each other, and made both of them fun on their own, and then even more amazing together.
We are looking forward to having so much more perpendicular fun. But now we got to take a time out.